Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
It is a Friday, so I'm here to grouse. Someone asked me if I could call it a Kerfuffle Friday, which I think is actually a great label, a great title for this event. So this is today's Kerfuffle Friday video. And in fact, I'm not even wearing a shirt with a logo on it. So deal with it. Deal with me. So here's the deal. Things that came up in the past week that caught my attention. I mentioned that in Michigan, it was never against the law to buy seeds or to sell seeds. And I know I'm beating this one to death, but I actually had somebody who said, Steve, you can't buy seeds in Michigan. And I said, well, I did. I went out and I bought seeds. And if you simply go to a Tractor Supply, that's the name of a store, they sell seeds. And the guy said, you're a liar. And I said, why is that? And he said, you haven't gone to every store in Michigan to confirm that they all sell seeds. But what I said was, I went into a Tractor Supply and they sold seeds, which is true. So that was a true statement. I had somebody, and this happens about once a month or so, where somebody will argue with me about a point of law. And I'll say, well, I'm a lawyer. And they'll say, well, I am too. And I actually had somebody email me, and they were using a name that appeared to be like their name. And then, the email address had their name in it, but then they signed their name to it. And the guy called me on a point of law and he said, you're wrong about this. And I said, well, no, I'm pretty certain I'm right. And I said, but I'm just curious, where are you licensed to practice law? And he hadn't said he was an attorney. I just simply said that as kind of like I say that once in a while to people who call me on the law, and I'll say, well, where are you licensed to practice law? And they say, well, I'm not a lawyer. And I also get the people who say, oh, you're going to pull the old lawyer thing on me. But this guy goes, well, I am a lawyer. I'm a lawyer in Michigan. I'm licensed to practice law in Michigan. But I looked up his name and he's not. And I said, you do understand that there's a database where I can look up names and you're not listed there. And he didn't respond to that. So it's kind of funny. The idea that you'd think that you can be a lawyer or a doctor or something and just say you are, and you can't prove otherwise. Yes, I can. Once in a while we talk about the Constitution. The Constitution is a document. You should be aware of it. And in America, it is a thing from which we derive not just our law, but the structure of our government. And the document is a fairly simple document when you consider how much brouhaha has flowed from it ever since. And yet, people argue about the Constitution on a daily basis. And that's to be expected. People argue about how to interpret it and so on. But I actually had somebody say, Steve, you understand the Constitution was written vaguely on purpose? They wrote it in a vague manner. It was written to be vague on purpose. And he said, that way they can interpret it in any way they want. I'm not sure who they are. I've never had anybody say the Constitution was written vaguely. Now, it's true that you can argue about it, and some people will sit there and go, wait, it looks like they're arguing and quibbling about really, really minor issues, and that might be true, but these are very, very important issues that they're arguing about. And so, but that doesn't mean it's vague. A lot of people know that in states where you have a shelter at home or stay at home order, many of the businesses are closed down, including haircutteries, places you'd get your hair cut. The haircuttists have been told to stay home. And so as a result of that, my hair is getting long. Somebody who's apparently flipping through my channel, not paying attention to the dates on my videos, hit a video in which I have very, very short hair and said, oh my God, Steve, such a bad home haircut. I'm so sorry that you had to resort to that, except the video is a year old. I routinely get my haircut fairly short. And I guess that was a reflection on their opinion of that short haircut. I've had several people say, Steve, by the way, why are you using blue paper on camera now? And I've had several people issue joke comments and so on. But I should point out to you, there's actually a reason for it. And it is not an accident that I am using blue paper for my stories. And the reason is, and I won't do the demonstration because that'd be annoying, but if I pull out a piece of white paper and too much of it is on camera, it screws up the settings in the camera and causes the camera to change. And I understand that the aperture could be set in a fixed manner and I could resolve that, but it would involve me going into the manual for the camera, and the manual is on white paper. I wouldn't have to do it on camera, but the point is, that I'm using blue paper. And if you think, Steve, that's such a strange thing to do, I noticed years ago David Letterman does it, and many talk show hosts do. They've got little cards they read from. The cards are often blue, and that's not a mistake or an accident. So there you go. I did a video about handling a ticket, and I mentioned what would happen in court with a ticket. And a guy responded to that, and he said, "You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about because you've obviously never handled a ticket in court before." He said, "But here's what would happen," and then laid out a definitive, concrete thing. This is what would happen in court if you were to go to court on this ticket. And I responded to that, and I said, number one, how many tickets have you handled? What state are you an attorney in? Again, getting back to that attorney thing. And the guy responded, said, "I'm not an attorney, but I've been to court on a ticket before. I know what happens." And he goes, "And you've never handled a ticket in court, so how would you know?" And I said, "I've probably handled more than 1,000 tickets in court. What makes you think I've never handled a ticket in court?" He goes, "You're a lemon law attorney." Now, here's the thing. While I specialize in lemon law, that's the bulk of my practice, I've been practicing law for almost 30 years now. Number one, when I started practicing, I handled all kinds of stuff. I did landlord-tenant law. I handled employment cases. I've handled a variety of cases, personal injury cases. But as the years went by and I began to focus my practice, it got to the point now where the bulk of what I do is, in fact, lemon law. But I handled a traffic ticket for a guy a couple months ago. A guy contacted me and said, "Hey, Steve, I got a ticket in Macomb, Michigan. Would you handle it for me?" "Sure, why not?" You asked, I'll do it. Not too long before that, another guy called me in Grand Rapids, over here. "Steve, I got a ticket. Handle it for me?" "Sure, why not?" I handle tickets all over the place. A good friend of mine who writes for Jalopnik wrote an article about a ticket I handled for him not too long ago. So, but I've also told the story about how I did the Woodward Dream Cruise tickets, where I literally was handling 100, 200 tickets, all from the same event, just for the fun of it. And when I said, "So you've been in court on one ticket and you think you have more expertise than I do?" And he said, "Yes, you're a lemon law attorney. How would you know about tickets?" Again, like I said, I've handled over 1,000. I think I know a little bit about tickets. And when I said that, he said, "Well, you can't blame me for thinking that, because why would a lemon law attorney handle tickets?" I'm an attorney? I handle tickets? So very, very strange. I did the video about the guy who got pulled over for doing 180 miles an hour on I-75 very, very late at night, not too long ago. And I told the story about how the police pulled him over and gave him a ticket for that. And I've had a surprisingly large number of people go, "How did they catch him? How did they catch him?" Now, I'm not sure if people watch too much television or why they think that the guy couldn't be caught doing 180 miles an hour. Number one, let's just think this through, okay? Let's assume that we're all starting here from blank, just zero, tabula rasa, okay? We're all starting with zero knowledge, but we know the story. And let's assume stationary cop car, and the Dodge goes by at 180 miles an hour. Cop car, I assume alarms go off, blinking lights, looks like, I don't know, like you just hit a jackpot on a slot machine. That's what I'm assuming happens in the cop car, but car's going by at 3 miles a minute, 180 miles an hour, okay? Now, let's assume for a moment that the police officer flips on his overhead lights. And let's assume for a moment that the driver may have even seen the police car, because sometimes that happens. Be that as it may, though, even if he didn't see the police car, as the driver goes zooming past the stationary cop car and he sees the lights go on in his rearview mirror, he has a choice to make. He could floor it and keep going, or he could let up and pull over. I suspect that he let up and pulled over. And why do I suspect that? Because the police officer gave him a break. As we pointed out, the police officer could have written him for reckless driving or racing, because he admitted he was driving along with somebody else who apparently was also going fast. So he probably pulled over on his own. That's how they caught him. But the strange part is how many people ask me that. And a lot of people, I don't get it. How'd they catch him? This isn't rocket science. Most people, when they see the lights go on, pull over. Am I crazy? I actually pull over for the cops. You don't? Now, I've had people say, but Steve, the guy has, in the first minute, put 3 miles on the cop. Well, the cop didn't wait a minute, first of all, to pull out. But number two, we're on an interstate, on I-75. There's only so many exits. At best, there's an exit a mile, and they're not even that often. So the police officer could jump on the old hoot and holler and call ahead and say, hey, a guy just blew by me doing $180. Somebody up there, please join me on this one. Okay. And by the way, the guy in the car who just blew by the cop at $180 is also thinking to himself, I wonder if that cop has a radio. You know, I bet modern technology being what it is, he might actually have a radio in that car. Maybe I should pull over. So and I'll admit, it's just a guess. I think it's an educated guess. But my guess is that the man pulled over. That's how they caught him. So I should do that. I did the video about how the first legal challenge in Michigan to the stay-at-home order was disposed of by a court. Somebody filed a lawsuit. The judge looked at it and dismissed it. And he dismissed it and said, sorry, but I'm not going to grant the relief in this lawsuit. There is still a similar parallel lawsuit that is being processed by the federal courts. Don't know when the hearing's on that, but the same group of people filed it in state and federal court. The state court case was shot down. Somebody took my video and shared it on Facebook and said, hey, everyone, just in case you're curious, if you're in Michigan, the first legal challenge has been shot down by the court. And I got to see the comments that went back and forth underneath that because someone tagged me. And somebody I don't know weighed in and said, that guy's full of you-know-what. He's making stuff up. That didn't happen. And the person who posted the video, to their credit, said, no, it turns out he's a lawyer, and he actually cites where he got the information from. He got it from the news. He's not making the stuff up. And the guy goes, that can't be true because it wasn't in the news. The guy said, I watched the news. It was not in the news. That guy is lying. So I'm lying because it wasn't in the news, despite the fact it was in the front page of MLive, the Detroit News, and the Detroit Free Press, the top 3 news organizations in Michigan. So I want to know what you're watching. If your news sources from Michigan don't include the big 3, and don't get me wrong, I know people are now going, Steve, they're all fake. They're all fake news. They're all fake news. But they reported that it happened. So you're telling me that you have news sources that are real news, but managed to miss the fact that this big lawsuit was dismissed. Or is all of this being made up? I don't know. It's a riddle wrapped in an enigma, surrounded by a mystery. And finally, in response also to the video about the lawsuit being dismissed, I had several people say, Steve, what right do the courts have to hear this case? What right do they have? I pointed out and I said, well, somebody files a lawsuit. Someone's got to hear it, right? And I had somebody say, but Steve, that's not the job of the courts. I said, well, no, someone filed a lawsuit. The courts are who hear lawsuits. The fact that they ruled the way you don't like doesn't mean they don't have the right to rule. But I said the courts have the right to hear the lawsuit. That's what they do. And someone responded to that by saying, Steve, the courts are there merely to protect us from the government. He goes, go look at the Constitution. The courts are there. I wrote it down. The courts are there to protect us from the government. That's all they're there for, to protect us from the government. And he said that was in the Constitution, by the way. And if you look at the Constitution, it actually says, here is how our government is set up. Article 1, the legislature. Article 2, president. Article 3, the courts. That's our government. So if the courts are there to protect us from the government, and the government is put together of 3 branches, the courts are there to protect us from the courts. Like I said, I wrote it down. The courts are there to protect us from the government. So I asked that same commenter and said, I'm curious, do you think the courts that this case was filed in is a foreign court or a private court? Or do you understand that it is in fact part of the government? Haven't got a response to that one yet. Don't know if I will or not. I'm not worried about it. But those are the kinds of things that popped up my radar this week. Once again, I'm running along. Don't know what to tell you. I will talk to you later. Questions or comments, put them below. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Get used to disappointment.